34 is what I have. And before we start, we're going to have our program coordinator, Vicki Avila, give us some housekeeping rules.
Yes, hello. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Council on Access and Fairness meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please type "I have a comment" or "I have a question" in the chat, and a message will be sent to the host. Alternatively, you can also use the raise hand feature. In efforts of transparency for all those joining this public meeting, whether by phone or Zoom, we request that you refrain from having side conversations on chat about the content of the meeting. Again, the chat feature is utilized simply as a tool for you to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. A friendly reminder that going forward, all Council on Access and Fairness meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. Also, another friendly reminder that this is a video conference and to please be aware of your surroundings behind you. If you are using your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid audio feedback issues. And lastly, while joining audio via computer is highly recommended, if an individual does lose audio, you can call in separately using the Zoom conference number. Thank you.
And thank you, Vicki. So let's take roll call. Elizabeth?
Sure. Okay. Judge Kim?
Here.
Ryan Harrison?
Here.
Heather Anderson?
Here.
Novella Coleman?
Here.
Sarah Good?
Here.
Michael Rhodes?
Here.
Shalak Richards? Judge Kristen Rosie?
Here.
Stephanie Santoro?
Here.
Sal Torres. Okay, I'm gonna also just call roll for our liaisons. So Pat Lee.
Here.
Kenneth Wang. Judge Yu.
Here, thank you, Elizabeth.
Great, and then our two Board of Trustee liaisons, Melanie Shelby. And then Jose Cisneros.
Good morning. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay, and then we have some State Bar staff. Judy McManigal.
Here.
Donna Hershkowitz.
I am here. Good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, and then we'll have some other State Bar staff join shortly. And Gagan Kaur is also here. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
So,
and Elizabeth, do we have quorum?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. And we'll move on to our call for public comment. Do we have anyone from the members of the public who would like to comment?
I'm going to briefly unmute everyone if they have any comments.
And if anyone from the member of the public would like to comment, please identify yourself since you have been unmuted, although I do see that everyone is muted.
They've muted them, excuse me, they've unmuted themselves, or they can unmute themselves now. I've given them permission to talk.
Okay, so do we have anyone from members of the public? Please unmute yourself, identify yourself, and please give us your comments. Going twice and hearing none. We'll move on to the chair's report. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. This is the first meeting that I will be chairing. Thank you to Ryan for covering me last meeting, and I'm really excited to begin this new year. Happy New Year, everyone, and hopefully 2021 will be a fantastic year. It'll be a year where we can maybe meet in person. But I'm really excited to work with everyone here. I just got off a phone call with the CLA, the California Lawyers Association stakeholders diversity meeting, and it's really exciting. And I think this new year will just be a great year where we can be innovative. We will have portions towards the end of our meeting where we can talk about different initiatives that we want to go forward with COAF. So I'm really excited, and thank you everyone for taking the time to be here and for all your diversity and inclusion efforts. We are actually going to take some of the calendar items out of order. Judge Yu, we are going to take your Judicial Council Liaison report out of order so that we can get you on your way. Jeju, you're on mute.
Fortunately, it throws a little thing that tells me I'm muted. Anyway, thank you so much. And I'm really sorry to ask you to disrupt the agenda. Friday is like a really huge day for calendars. So I'll be able to stay till about 1:10 and then I'll have to go take my calendar. So thank you for calling me out of order. And please let me know if you have any questions. So I'm happy to provide an update on the diversity and inclusion initiatives from the Judicial Council. As you know, diversity in the branch continues to be a priority, and the Judicial Council continues to highlight the Pathways to Judicial Diversity Toolkit. In 2021, we anticipate increasing our judicial mentorship efforts by providing technical assistance to local courts and associations that are starting judicial mentorship programs at the local level. And so just as an aside, the CAPAJA, which is the California Asian Pacific American Judges Association, is starting a pretty robust mentoring effort, and I co-chair that committee with Judge LIAISON. And so there's 4 elements with mentoring. We're mentoring people who want to go on the bench. We're mentoring new bench officers. We're mentoring judges who have subject matter questions, like if they now they're handling homicide trials and they've never had one before, they can access mentors who have scripts and tips. And then the final mentoring prong is mentoring CAPAJA members who want to learn to be leaders or who want to go on to leadership opportunities like serving on the Judicial Council or the Commission on Judicial Performance or something like that. And so the Judicial Council now is going to be able to lend technical assistance to bar associations or courts who have their own judicial mentoring programs. Additionally, the Judicial Council will be continuing to provide remote presentations on judicial diversity throughout 2021. So currently there are joint presentations on pathways to the bench with CLA, and that one is planned for February 19th, 2021, and another in April of 2021. Currently we have over 120 people registered for the February program, and I can share a copy of that flyer unless you already all have it. We anticipate this will be first of many, many events leading up to the Judicial Diversity Summit in September of this year. Planning continues for the Judicial Diversity Summit in 2021. The Judicial Council is working with CLA to determine the best format for the summit and the rollout of events that will lead up to the summit. And then finally, the Judicial Council continues to work with Jenny to provide training on judicial diversity, bias, and the effects on decision-making. And so most recently, a training was held last month in January of 2021, and there's going to be another training in August of 2021. So that concludes my report, and I wanted to check and see if anyone has any questions about anything.
Any questions for Judge Yu?
Thank you, Judge Kim, for allowing me to go out of order, and I'll just stay on till about 1:10. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Yu. And if you can forward the flyer, we will forward it to our contacts.
Yes, I'll send it to Elizabeth right now. And thank you, Elizabeth, for your accommodations too.
Thank you. And I would just add on judicial diversity, it's even more important since we have a brand new appointment secretary. And so we really want to get the word out, and we want to hear from him as to what he's looking for to diversify the bench. So let's go ahead and move on to our consent items now that we have quorum. Approval of the meeting summary and action items from December 4, 2020. So everyone should have gotten a copy of that. And are there any comments on the December 4 meeting? Hearing none, may I get a motion to approve and a second?
I'll move.
to approve.
So Ryan moves. Anyone second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Kristen will second. And Elizabeth, roll call.
Judge Kim,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Novella,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Shalak, Kristen,
Aye.
Stephanie,
Aye.
Sal. Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you. And that was unanimously. And let's go ahead and move on to 5. We're just whizzing through our agenda today. which are the State Bar reports. So if we can get an update on the Office of Access and Inclusion activities and staffing by Andrea.
Sure. Thank you. And good afternoon again, everyone. Well, first, as an update, as I shared in an email earlier this week with this group, I did just make the announcement that I'm going to be transitioning back to a pro bono counsel role with Morgan Lewis. And I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to work with this great group of people on these issues for longer. But I first wanted to say, reiterate what I said in that email, which is, I really want to stay engaged and support this work in any way I can going forward. So please let me know as I can support this from a big law perspective, from a pro bono perspective. Obviously a lot of diversity work on the law firm side as well. And so I do hope and intend to stay engaged in this work in any ways that I can moving forward. And Elizabeth and I will be talking about one idea later on that I'm really excited about and hope to stay engaged on. And also, I think in great news, I'm excited as part of that transition that we were able to announce that we have new leadership with Elizabeth and Juan co-leading the office as program managers. I know you've had a chance to work with both of them, especially Elizabeth, and you just couldn't be in better hands. So I'm just really excited that I think the office is in such a great position moving forward, and am just genuinely so happy to see them step into those leadership roles. Great. A couple other just items of business. So COAF appointments applications will be opening for the 2021-22 term shortly, and we're anticipating there should be one opening. So if you have possible candidates in mind, there's a couple other quick updates about the work of the office that are not co-op specific, but I thought you might be interested in, just so I can quickly touch on them. One is that there was a new this year $5 opt-out in licensing fees, which is for provisionally licensed lawyers to apply to work as fellows at legal aid organizations across the state. So we're finalizing the RFP for those grants, and that should be released soon. So excited to see that rolling out. I also just wanted to share that on January 22nd, the Board of Trustees approved their legislative priorities, which included a recommendation to support a statutory change to raise the client income eligibility threshold for IOLTA grantees from 125 to 200% of the federal poverty level. This was really driven by feedback we got from the legal aid community, but we're excited to see this moving forward to the legislature. I think it's a really good policy, and again, is really in support of what legal aid prefers, to give more flexibility in the clients that they're working with through that IOLTA funding. And also just wanted to share another happy staffing update, which is that the office has 2 new senior financial analysts beginning on Monday. This overall increases the financial capacity we've had in the past and IT expertise. And I really think this will strengthen our grant making work, but also because, as you know, our diversity and access work is all closely tied together, and these individuals will be working across our projects. I think it is just good news for the office, for the grant making, and for the broader work going forward. And we're really excited for the two folks that are starting. We think they'll add a lot to the office. And also, as part of all of these transitions, I wanted to share that we are going to be hiring a new senior program analyst as well. And as you know, our program analysts do work on access and diversity issues. So again, we're happy to see this structure getting put in place, and really think it's just going to only enhance the work of the Office of Access and Inclusion moving forward.
Thank you. And we're going to miss you, Andrea, but we have no doubt that Elizabeth and Dawn will try to fill your big shoes. And I'm sure that they are already doing so. So thank you, Andrea. We are going to miss you.
Thanks so much.
And let's go ahead and move on to 5B, which is updates on initiatives to improve the attorney discipline system. And Elizabeth, you have an update from the appointment to the ad hoc committee?
Yeah, so the Board of Trustees made appointments to the Ad hoc Commission on Attorney Discipline. As you will recall, there was the opportunity that 2 COAF members may have been appointed. And so I want to congratulate Sarah Good for her appointment to that important commission representing COAF. I also wanted to note that the application process for this commission has been reopened. The commission is seeking representation on the commission of groups found to be most disproportionately impacted by the discipline system. As you know, the commission's goal is to ensure a fair and effective discipline process, discipline system, which would include issues related to disparities in attorney discipline. So we are doing more outreach for this, and I will send you, I can put the link in the chat. But I will also send the link out by email after the meeting, and really encourage all COAF members and our liaisons to please share out the information and opportunity to your networks. So the application will be open until February 22nd.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Your statement was very politically correct and circumspect. I'll be a little more direct. And I've been getting a lot of calls, personal calls from attorneys in the community that are concerned that there are no African-American males on the commission. And so I think that is what is in need of representation for. And I'm going to be working with the California Association of Black Lawyers and other affinity entities, sub-entities from counties to help find a good person to fill that role. And I hope that the other members of this council can help with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
So Elizabeth, if you can forward that information to us via separate email, we can go ahead and forward it to our contacts. So thank you.
Yes. And I'll actually put the link in the chat right now, but I will also send an email following.
Okay, thank you. I think email might be a little easier if we're going to forward it to our contacts.
Yeah. So I'll send that email after
Okay.
our meeting today.
Thank you. Let's move on to our discussion and action items. We're going to review the COAF work plan, which was approved on May 14, 2020. And we're going to start with our update on our diversity summit. And so Elizabeth and Michael Rhodes will be giving an update as to how the government diversity summit is coming along.
So let me share my screen. So the working group for the Diversity Summit for the Government Sector is Michael Rhodes, Judge Rosie, and Stephanie. And we've met a couple times already to discuss our plans for that, and Michael will give more of an update on that. But I did want to refresh everyone's memory and recap our 2020 Diversity Summits. As you know, for 2020, we made the decision to hold sector-specific summits to really have the opportunity to share out that specific data with the stakeholders, and also to discuss each sector's unique issues and opportunities related to diversity and inclusion. So in September, we held a private sector summit. We were able to present the diversity report card and have a panel discussion with some leaders in law firms and in-house legal departments with really successful diversity and inclusion initiatives. We also had a breakout session, which I think for our first Zoom event of this nature, I think it was really well received. And we had about 50 attendees. In December, we held our nonprofit sector summit, and this was held in partnership with the Legal Aid Association of California. And we also presented, again, the diversity report card focusing in on the nonprofit sector data. LAC has their own recruitment and retention report, which they also presented on. We held a similar panel discussion with some legal aid leaders. And we also had a very interesting training on race equity through a health and safety lens that was very well received. And we've actually received some requests to not just give it, the 20 minutes we were able to slot into the Zoom meeting, but to expand on that. And we similarly had about 50 attendees. So I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I also want to thank Judge Rosie and Stephanie for their work on this. It's been interesting to get it together. The date is still to be decided, but we're aiming for the first half of 2021. And of course, it's going to be on Zoom. So hopefully that means that we'll get a lot of folks from all across the state. We've been working on putting together an agenda. And so you can see on the slideshow our sort of draft outline of what we're looking at. And we wanted to start by recapping some of the statistics that are covered in the diversity report card to really show what the government sector looks like in terms of diversity, with a particular focus on leadership roles as opposed to line attorney roles. We then wanted to move into talking about the importance of representation and diversity, particularly in the government sector, and some of the more common barriers to recruitment and retention of diverse attorneys. The common ones you're probably thinking of: money, opportunities for advancement, things like that. And then we're going to go from there into what can government entities do to promote diversity. Part of our conversation has been talking about why a lot of government agencies or folks that are in government agencies have some reticence about promoting diversity because of Proposition 209, which limits the way that certain public entities can take into account race, sex, national origin, ethnicity when they're making certain decisions. But we felt that educating people about what they can and can't do might be one way to encourage people to take more action and to do more things. And so we thought that the next step of that would be to ask government agencies, what are you doing? What are you doing now to promote diversity, either through recruitment or through retention? And hopefully we'll get some presentations from local, state, or federal government agencies in California on what they're doing as a way of inspiring and encouraging other people to set up similar programs.
Thanks, Michael. And then following this government sector summit, I think we have the opportunity for additional diversity convenings for 2021. Some potential ideas that we are thinking about are a summit to share out the 2020 report card, as well as sector-specific calls to actions and findings. And then I think we've mentioned, and we'll have a report a little later today, this afternoon, that we are releasing a survey for attorneys related to the pandemic. And so we may have also the opportunity to share out findings from that survey as well. So if folks have any ideas or questions or comments, we welcome them.
So I did have one question. Elizabeth, were the private and the nonprofit sector summits, were they recorded and are they available for others to view?
We did not record those summits. We made the decision not to record because we wanted to have really frank conversations and didn't want that to be a barrier.
Okay. And so my guess is the government sector will not be recorded as well.
I don't think so, unless the working group has other ideas. But that was the thinking, is that we wanted people just to be honest, and that it was, nothing that could be, held against anybody else in the future or anything like that,
Right. Any other questions for Michael, Elizabeth, or the group, the working group? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the update on the attorney pandemic survey.
We are moving so ahead of schedule.
I know.
I don't think our staff has joined just yet.
Christine is on.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
I just need to be promoted.
Oh,
Just
great.
give me 1 minute. And adjust.
Hi, Christine.
Hello.
We are just whizzing through the agenda, so you're already up. So when you're ready, we'd like to hear from you.
Great. I just need to share my screen. Okay. And can everyone see the screen all right? All right, wonderful. Okay, thank you. Let me move that. Okay. All right, well, first I would like to thank the working group that is helping with this pandemic survey, and that's Sarah, Michael, and Sal. It seems like, and it was a few months ago that we first met, and they helped with the initial brainstorming of topics that we want to ask for this survey, and also helped identify some people to attend our focus groups and have interviews with. So thank you with that. And as you'll hear in just a bit, they have more work ahead of them. So thank you again in advance. So just to, we've talked about this before, but just a quick recap about the purpose of the survey. We want to find out from attorneys what the impact of the pandemic has been on them in general, and we're asking some specific questions as well to find out the impact specifically on diverse attorneys. And as I note up here, the perceived efforts of employers to recruit and retain a diverse attorney workforce, and what we, unlike some other surveys that we have released, we're asking specifically about their opinion on some of the efforts that their employers do, and our goal after collecting the results is to analyze them and report on the findings and publish a report of those results. And why are we doing this? Well, because it supports the overarching goal that we want to achieve a more diverse statewide attorney population that reflects California's population, just like the diversity report card. And as we mentioned in the diversity report card, and as we've mentioned in the diversity summits. And that leads me up to the survey development, which was the idea for this survey actually came from that private sector diversity summit, when one of the participants asked, why don't we ask some questions about how attorneys are handling the pandemic in our attorney census. And that adding a few questions to the attorney census wasn't going to work for a variety of reasons. So we thought this was a great opportunity to turn this into a bigger survey and get more information. And then, as I mentioned before, our working group met and identified some key topic areas that we can focus our questions on. And then last fall/winter, we held a number of focus groups, sector-specific focus groups, and quite a few interviews as well to get feedback on those topics and our initial question ideas, and have been drafting the survey questions and working with our Office of Research and Institutional Advancement on refining those questions. And that's where we're at now. So just an idea, I think by the next COAF meeting, we'll have some more to report on. But just to give you a brief overview of some of the topic areas that we're looking at, of course, we're looking at employment, and this is going to be asking participants to identify their sector as well as their position. We're also looking at workplace resources, what attorneys are receiving from what resources they're receiving that would be helpful to make it through this time from their employers. And also workplace experiences. And some of these workplace experiences are very similar to what we ask in the attorney census. But the difference with this survey is we're asking them beforehand, before the pandemic, what this was like, and now, to really identify if there has been any change. But then we've also, as I briefly alluded to in the beginning, we're asking some additional questions. We're asking some questions specifically about diversity and inclusion, about racial justice, and anti-racism, and pro bono. And then we are also asking just a few questions about any financial impacts they've had based on the pandemic. And because this is a separate survey from the attorney census, we're also asking some demographic questions. And this survey, like the law school survey, is going to be administered in Qualtrics. I do have that we're going to release it in March, likely in March, but we don't have a specific date yet, but that should be coming soon. And we'll release it to all attorneys through a unique survey link. So the next steps, and this gets back to what I mentioned about our working group helping us out. And they'll be helping us with testing to get that real attorney perspective. They'll be testing the survey, seeing how long it takes for them to go through, make sure our flow of questions is working and everything looks good. So again, thank you in advance for that. And then we'll administer the survey, review and analyze the responses. And then again, as I mentioned, we'll develop and publish a report. So I breezed through pretty quickly with that update. Are there any questions?
So Christine, if I just may add for the information of the co-op members, although the survey is essentially ready to go, the reason that we're waiting till March is to avoid survey fatigue. As those of you who pay your annual licensing fees yourself know, the fee period just closed at the beginning of February. And when you went in to pay your fees online, you were taken through the attorney census, which is a survey that includes demographic questions, includes questions about job satisfaction. It's all the information that we use to complete the first report card. And as with most people, the attorneys who pay their fees are typically doing it the last week in January, last couple of weeks, really close to the deadline. And we didn't want to turn around another survey, a lengthy survey a week or two later. We really felt that that would depress the response rate. And so we wanted to give folks enough time so we didn't have that survey fatigue. And then we'll be doing an explanation as we send out the survey as to why this is different and why it's so important that they answer this particular survey.
And Christine, I did have a question with regards to some of the demographics. I know we'll probably be using the same demographics from the attorney survey, but will we be asking about individuals that have young children that are working through the pandemic? Because that adds another layer of difficulty. What are some of the demographic questions that we will be asking, just so that we can use the report in multiple ways?
That's a great question. We're not asking attorneys to identify if they have children, but what we are asking throughout in other questions is if they're having issues with managing childcare. So we're reaching it in a different way without having them specifically identify how many children they might have or the ages or anything like that. We're just focusing on if they're having specific challenges related to childcare.
And is there a section where you can add in comments, or would the survey be more clicking on the choices given to you?
For I would say for the most part, probably 98% of it is going to be just clicking on different responses, because we are trying to get the most responses possible, like the attorney census. We don't want too many open-ended questions. It would be really hard to analyze, because we're hoping for a similar response. I don't know if we'll get quite the attorney census response, but that's what we're hoping for.
And sorry to chime in, but I just saw a question that, Kristen, because you're presenting, you might not have seen about other caregiving responsibilities, such as family members. And it does address those other kinds of responsibilities as well.
Hi, Christine. I'm wondering if you have thought about naming it something different than the pandemic survey, because a lot of what I saw you are thinking about addressing to me is beyond the pandemic, like the social injustice and racial injustice and anti-racism concerns could be happening even if we were not restricted from a quarantine standpoint. I think those were aggravated in an election year. So to me, they're like, it's more like a 2020 survey that has the health issues related to COVID, the quarantine issues from working at home, the social injustice issues, and maybe some election related issues as well, and the dividing lines along those lines. So a different name for it might be more accurate. I just want to suggest.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we do in the survey, we identify that those two subjects don't necessarily go together. But I didn't think about changing the name, but that's a great point. And I think we can think more about that and what we might call it.
Because I think one of the things that would be helpful is not only use it as a pandemic survey, but whatever information that we get, we can use it to parlay into other areas. And the reason why I brought up the caregiver issue and children, there was a time when we wanted to address retention in the legal profession. And there was a discussion, I believe it was probably at our private or government sector summit, not in 2020, but the year before, where we wanted to do an analysis of when women were taking a pause from the legal profession to have children and to focus on family, and if we were making that transition easier for them to come back. So I'm trying to look at ways where we can use this survey, because I think we all know getting people to fill out surveys is extremely difficult. And now that we don't have that dangle of having them do it during their fees, I just want to use this pandemic survey in many other resources, so that we can collect the data once and hopefully try to glean from that what we can for other retention issues. Any other questions for Christine? Thank you. And I believe we now have Sal Torres joining us. I think that he had some issues with video, but we can hear you. Actually, we can see you now.
Hi, thank you, Judge. Thank you, everybody. My apologies for being late. So yeah, I'm here now.
And Sal, we're just moving through this agenda. So we are already at discussion item D, which is an update on plan to address law school retention.
All right.
And we have Elizabeth, who will provide an update for us.
Yes. So I'm providing an update on behalf of the working group, who are Shalak and Sal, and our staff lead on this is Crystal Bundang, who's not available today. So just as a reminder, the survey purpose is to learn about existing efforts to recruit and retain diverse law students in California's law schools. And the goal is to develop a resource to summarize current efforts and highlight any best practices. And the goal is to complete that this fall. And similar to our other survey, the pandemic survey, the overarching goal is to achieve a diverse statewide attorney population that reflects California's population. So the survey that we launched in November, we launched last fall, was focused on the following areas: student recruitment, academic support programs, non-academic student support, mentorship, career development, faculty and staff, financial support, and key performance indicators. So the survey closed in November, and as of today, we have 42 surveys completed, and we reached out to 53 schools in California. And so our response rate, we're quite pleased with, but we are continuing to follow up with law schools to get additional responses. Once we have that survey data to complete, we will be reviewing it along with the attrition data that we receive from the California Accredited and Unregistered Law Schools annual report, as well as the 509 reports from the ABA. And as I mentioned, the goal will be to develop a resource by September of this year. And so we are very excited about this possibility. We've had a lot of good enthusiasm from the law schools to participate. And so we really hope that this will give us a lot of insight into law school retention and what initiatives or programs are best are doing the best work in this area. So I don't know, Sal, or I can't see if Shalak has joined yet, but if either of you have any additional comments, I welcome you to chime in.
No, that was a great summary, Elizabeth. Thank you.
And Elizabeth, how do you anticipate the resources being available to students?
So this resource, I think, really would probably be, the audience would probably be law schools. Like these are programs and activities that have been successful to retain diverse students and to have successful students. And so I think that it will be more law school facing, but of course we will make it available, publicly. And I think it will, law students could also access it to see, maybe they want to know what schools will provide the most support, where they might feel like they could be the most successful. So I think that's kind of a secondary benefit that we're hoping to have.
Thank you. Any other questions for Elizabeth, Sal, or I don't think Chalak is on the line yet, but any
Kristen
other?
actually has her hand raised.
I do. I found the raised hand feature. So Elizabeth, I just had a question. The 50 or so law schools that you guys reached out to, were those all ABA or were those Cal accredited and registered as well?
They were all the California law schools. So ABA, California credit, and registered.
Okay. And when you report on that, will you break them down by ABA versus the Cal registered and accredited? And the only reason I ask is I know that you and I and probably some other folks also saw Justice Liu's report on law school recruitment and who's going to what schools. And so I'm just wondering if you're going to break that down a little bit, since his report showed, I think he called them tier 5 schools tend to skew more racially diverse, but also have a harder time, getting jobs and passing the bar later.
That's our goal. We hope to be able to present the data that way. As some of you may know, the annual report, and that's the report that the state bar collects from California credit and registered schools. It was just recently revised to include more demographic information. And so this is the first year that we've received this data, and we haven't yet analyzed it yet. And so hopefully we will be able, and for a lot of schools, this is their first time gathering and reporting this data. So we're hoping that we will have that data available, and that is the goal. And so, yes. So hopefully is, I think, the best answer I can give to that question right now.
I'll take that.
Heather Anderson has her hand raised.
Hi, I'm just curious, in the survey, when we queried about support, did we also ask about cultural support in addition to academic and career support? Did we probe into students who may feel supported academically and from a career standpoint and for preparation for the bar, but do they actually feel comfortable in their skin in the classroom from a cultural standpoint?
That's a really good question. I don't think we asked that question specifically.
I don't think, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, but that's really good. And I think, let me just make a note. And we are asking the law schools about this, about all their programming. And so when we get the data back, we can see if there's anything that trends to that and inquire further. But I don't think we asked that question specifically.
I think for future ones, we should ask based on like real-time conversations I'm having with students.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a very good suggestion. Thank you, Heather. Michael?
Just a quick question. I realize the survey's already been rolled out. I really look forward to reading it and seeing the results. One thing that law schools haven't been great about is collecting data on the demographics of LGBTQ, especially trans and gender non-conforming students. And I'm wondering whether the survey touches on that.
So our survey to loss, the survey that we worked on related to the retention programs, I don't think touched on that specifically. And then I know with the annual report, I know that those are categories that will be phased into the reporting. So I don't think it was included for the 2020 data set, but it will be included in future sets, I believe.
Anyone else? Moving on, update on efforts to institutionalize diversity and inclusion goals in the bar exam, and that will be Sal Torres, who will provide an update for us.
Yes, I actually don't have the slides. I think Dawn, there you are. Hi,
The
Dawn.
slides, sorry, they just promoted me. So let me share my screen, Sal. Hold on.
You got promoted, all right. Thanks, Dawn, and thanks, Dawn, for great job promoting this. So the committee there is myself, Heather, Dawn, the bar exam question development and grading committee. We met in December and we met with the gentleman who presented all the facts and figures that we had the last time we all met as a group. As you can see there, is sort of beginning the examination of the bar exam questions. We are planning to meet again soon because one of the things that we went through everything and talked about, you know, how they dissected all the questions and all the information and how the statistics all came about. But one of the questions that came out of that is, could we actually look at one of the bar exam questions and get an understanding of how they have analyzed it, how they dissected it, and how they come to all of these facts and, all of these figures around the statistics around the question itself. So that's, we're gonna need to get about, I think they said we're gonna get about 10 to 15 questions for us to analyze at the next time we have a meeting. And then we'll go through it and then get a better understanding of how they did it, how they arrived at that data to then present to all of you.
I also just want to add that for this formal DIF working group, Sal is co-chairing it. And there's one more co-chair from the CBE group.
Committee of Bar Examiners.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a formal working group. The meetings are noticed, so anybody's welcome to come, and we could share the next meeting is scheduled for sometime in April, and we can share with you all once that meeting date has been finalized.
So if I may add, I'll circle back with the staff to the Committee of Bar Examiners as well. As I envisioned it, one of the sort of the key thing that this group could be doing, what Sal was referencing, that you would be looking at some of the questions. Really, the ideal is there were some number of questions, not a significant number, but some number of questions that were deemed, as Sal can tell you, by the statistician, psychometrician, as having had a disparate impact. And so those were my expectation was that you all would be looking at all of those questions that fell into that category. So you could go through them and say, hey, is there a theme here? Is there something that we can say, and you're going to be guessing, but is there something that suggests to us, based on our experience and knowledge, that questions framed this way, I can understand why a group of people who meet these characteristics would not perform as well. Because the idea is that you would then provide guidelines, rules, guidance to make sure when we are developing questions in the future that we avoid any of those traps that we may have inadvertently fallen into. So I certainly want to make sure that you have the opportunity to review all of the questions that sort of hit that mark of having some level of differential performance.
Yes, yeah, Dawn, I think that's right. And I think that's where we grouped it down to about a dozen questions. And I think that was the meeting that there was the cul-de-sac example. That was the one, right?
Yes.
I think I brought that up. There were some students, I had read that there was a student that said that cul-de-sac was a term that they first encountered at the bar exam, because in in their culture and their way they were brought up, they never heard that word before. So that's one of the, to Donna's point, which is a great one, is that's one of the things we need to look at is how are we proposing questions that maybe otherwise these students have a legal acumen to answer, but the particular introduction of a new word in the bar exam might be the first time that they see it. And that's not surprising. So that kind of analysis is what we like to do a little bit more in depth when we have that second meeting.
It was cul-de-sac and magnitude. And in both of those situations, they said the word was imperative to the answer. So it's not just an introduction of a new vocabulary word, but one that actually, impacts the answer itself. And Sal did a great summary of what we talked about, but what the summary kind of was that we know the disparate impact exists and we know who it's impacting, but we don't still know why or how. And so that is the deep dive into these questions, is to try to get to the bottom of that. So.
And just to add to Sal and Heather's report, for the next DIF meeting, the State Bar is going to be contracting with a Scantron representative. She's going to be coming to the meeting, and so setting kind of a baseline standard of how we look at the questions. There are many, many questions that are flagged, and so the Office of Admission is combing through them and presenting the dozen or so that we could take a closer look. But the Scantron representative is going to really key in on like what are the factors, so that we were reviewing it kind of consistently across the board.
And any other questions for Sal or Duan? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to F, update on the Committee on State Bar Accredited and Registered Schools, proposed rules revisions, and Elizabeth will provide an update.
Thank you, Judge Esther. So as a reminder, CS Bars had requested input from COAF on their proposed accreditation rules. And so thank you to Kristen and former COAF member Donna Shealy for providing really important feedback to CS Bars. They were able to incorporate that into some DEI values into the proposed accreditation rules. And so those rules are right now out for public comment until February 15th. And it's anticipated that they will go before the Board of Trustees in March. So CS Bars has also now requested that COAF and staff now come back and provide additional input on their guidelines for implementation of the DEI section of their proposed rules. Judge Kristen, she's on board to participate in this. And so I wanted to ask if there was another volunteer from COAF who might be interested in working on this with Kristen and me. I think it's a great opportunity. And again, these rules are for California accredited and registered law schools.
Any volunteers?
I'll volunteer.
Oh, great. Thank you, Sarah. So I will reach out to both you and Kristen later today with additional information on that. There is a meeting in March that they have CS Bars has invited us to, and I believe it's March 24th. So that is the update there. We'll have more to provide at our next meeting, I'm sure.
Any questions for Elizabeth? Let's move on to our Elimination of Bias MCLE committee. And we have Erica Carroll.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. Let me just pull up a PowerPoint real quick. Okay. So a brief update on the MCLE working group after the new elimination of bias rules went into effect in the fall. We've now turned our attention to working on an elimination of bias online course that'll be offered through the State Bar website. So part of this working group is Judge Esther, Novella, and myself as staff. So the online elimination of bias course is going to be 1 hour free of charge to all attorneys who are licensed in California, and it's going to have an implicit bias focus, which will aid attorneys in complying with the new requirements that are going to be going into effect starting next year. So it's underway. I believe I gave a brief update at the last meeting when we were just getting started, but staff has been meeting with our content expert and the course designer for about the past month and a half on a weekly basis, and we're making some good progress. So our content expert is Catrice Monson. She is a former senior vice president of diversity and inclusion at CBS, and she's the co-founder of an organization called Right Size Media, which also works in the D&I space, providing trainings and consultations. So she's been a really excellent partner on this project. And Info Pro Learning is the company that's doing the design, and they've worked with the State Bar extensively on our new attorney training program, and I believe on the Board of Trustees orientation. So they're very familiar with the State Bar, and it's been a positive and productive experience. We have been working on sort of just bringing together all of potential content that could go into this course. We're still refining it. We're moving into a phase soon of creating an enhanced content outline in the storyboard where it'll really start to come together and take shape. And we've gotten some great feedback from the working group so far. So we're hoping in the next few months we'll be able to complete it in May or so. So just to give you an overview of some of the main course components that we've been looking at, one being identifying implicit bias. So understanding the neuroscience of implicit bias, how it occurs, common types of bias. So under that heading, exploring things like in-group or affinity bias or confirmation bias, as well as the impact of bias on individuals and in the legal profession. We're also exploring microaggressions, how to identify them, the impact that they can have, as well as understanding micro inequities. For introduction to diversity and inclusion, talking through the benefits of a diverse workforce, how you can have diversity without inclusion, how they're not the same thing, and you know, just talking through sort of the benefits in the legal profession of a diverse and inclusive workplace, as well as legal system, and having a profession that reflects, you know, the diversity of persons in California as well. And then there will also be a topic on disrupting bias and really working to provide learners with the tools to address their own biases, as well as within the legal system or their own workplaces. And then it'll wrap up with an assessment at the end, which will give us a good idea of, you know, how the learning experience has been, where we need to improve. This course will be updated every 3 years or so, so where we can update the content and clarify or provide more information. And it'll also have information that takeaway resources, essentially, that learners can use to continue their learning beyond the course and reference after they've finished their MCLE credit. So these are the proposed learning outcomes that we've been kind of working with or trying to keep in mind when we've been talking with the team about developing the content. And so I just wanted to share these with the group to see if there's any feedback on the learning outcomes or questions about it.
Any questions for Erica?
I think Heather has a question.
I am so excited about this. I think this is awesome. But in the spirit of pipelining and trying to be disruptive for the next generation, I think it would be great if we invite the points of contact for the law school and the accredited and registered school surveys that you all have been dealing with at each of the schools to ensure that they take this course once it's offered. Because I think we should be thinking about how we're training, how professors are bringing that to law students who will then be entering the workforce. I mean, this is all aimed at those of us who are already here, but I think if we start to change the mindset earlier for people, that would be helpful. So since we'll have this great content, I just would want to encourage the people that you've already been in contact with because of the survey to participate and get these learnings as well. They should be as MCLE, but they might, need some nudging. So I would just suggest that.
And Heather, that's a great idea. One of the reasons why we wanted this to be free and provided by the State Bar was so that we can have as many people access this as possible. It was also to kind of lessen the blow of having to require them to do one more thing. But it was really important that we provide this free of access and that the State Bar provides that tool through the web learning. And so absolutely those things were taken into consideration when we convened for this group. And I think that's a great idea. We should encourage, especially our stakeholders in that arena, to get training, and even the non-lawyers, even the students, to get to click on and take a look at this training.
I think
Novella Coleman.
I wonder if it would be, I'm not sure if it would fit for this MCLE, but I wonder if it would be helpful to do like a mini survey before people begin the content, so that we have like as a point of reference whether or not like the information conveyed in the training reflects the training when they take like the assessment at the end, or if they're just coming in with what they think all of these terms mean, and then at the end it's like the same thing as what they still think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we can explore. Yeah, because there will be an assessment at the end, but sort of a pre-test, post-test would be helpful, engaging effectiveness.
Erica, maybe that can be, like you said, in the assessment section. It can be just another question that they can answer, perhaps.
Yeah, we'll definitely bring that to the team and see how that might be incorporated.
Because Novella, I think that is important that we kind of measure the success of the training, and having that question in there. And since we're going to have them complete the assessment anyway at the end of the training, I think that would be extremely helpful. And I can only see about 5 people on the screen. So are there any other questions?
I don't see anybody else's hand raised or requests in the chat.
Now I can see everyone. Anything else, Erica?
That's it from me.
Okay, thank you. And while there's no real update on the early pipeline to the profession and outreach materials, Elizabeth and I, we did want to encourage you to forward both the PDF and the digital brochure of how to be a lawyer. And that was sent to everybody in an email from Elizabeth on December 10th, 2020. We also have the video from the Warriors, which was absolutely amazing. So if you can forward it to your contacts and have that available to students that you may mentor, anyone that you think would benefit. I know a lot of work, especially by our Vice Chair Ryan, has gone into making this happen. So thank you to all the committee members. And if we can just now do the distribution, then we would really appreciate that. So let's move on to I, which is the Judicial Council requests for assistance on judicial diversity.
Judge Esther, we have some folks who want to make some comments.
Yes.
Can I ask Judge Esther, is there any problem, do you think, sending a copy of the brochure to say, excuse me, the ABA for Judicial Outreach Week when judges are going into schools via Zoom, and speaking to elementary and middle school students? Do you think that do you think there's a problem with, giving it to the judicial outreach folks at the ABA?
I don't see any problems. It is a published document. It's just a matter of getting it into their hands. It is available. It should be available, Elizabeth, online as well on our website.
It's on our website. So I can, after the meeting, along with the other links, I can include that as well.
Okay. And I definitely have a link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elizabeth, can you send the final version of the video to me, please?
Of course.
Those documents as well. Thank you.
And I don't do a lot of social media, but if you wanted to upload it onto your social media or any of those platforms, I'm sure that's fine as well, since it is a publication that has been finalized.
Yeah, that was sort of the original idea, Judge, to make it social media friendly so that people can really get the word out.
Right.
Yeah, that was fun.
I've been assigning it as homework or pre-work for any of the like career panels that I speak on. For like before you can come in the room, I'm going to quiz you about it, so I make sure that the kids do it first. So that's another way.
I love that idea.
Yeah, and I think some of you heard Judge Esther say that we, Judge Esther, Ryan, and Michael and I, we were at a CLA diversity convening earlier this morning. And so I was able to share out the brochure and the video to everyone on that call as well. So hopefully people are spreading it out and utilizing it, because they're two really great products.
So I'll leave it to the tech savvy people to do that. Anything else on that topic? Moving on to the Judicial Council request for assistance on judicial diversity. I believe we have Ms. Pacheco joining us as a public member, but Judge Yu and I, we participated in a panel discussion answering questions about Jenny and the appointment process with the Legal Aid Association of California. And that was on January 21st, 2021, and we had a good showing, and it was really our opportunity to again reach out to the legal aid community, because again, diversity also includes diversity in practice areas, and so we were able to conduct that outreach. There was also a separate outreach that Ms. Pacheco had facilitated, I believe, a week before. And that was with an actual former legal aid attorney who was appointed. And so that really provided the pivotal link and answering questions that were very specific to individuals who wanted to apply for the bench in that legal arena. And
Hey,
Judge Yu, yes.
Come on in.
Okay. Sorry.
No problem. And Judge Yu and I, we also provided what COAF had worked on several years ago, which is materials that helps you really tackle the application as a whole. Anyone that has even taken a look at the judicial application, it is a bear. And I can tell you from experience, it took me 7 months to complete it. And we found that if you go from one to the end of the question, there are points where you get stuck. And so COAF, Judge Holly Fujier, our former chair, along with Judge Brenda and I, we revised the way to tackle that application so that it's a little more doable. And we pinpoint which questions to answer first so that you're not stuck. And if you are stuck, move on to these questions just so that you can get that application rolling. We also provide links to the selection committee, so the Judicial Selection Advisory Committee. So all of those materials on behalf of COAF were provided to the attendees of that legal aid seminar. So that was very helpful. And thank you, Ms. Pacheco, for setting that up for us. So let's move on to our review of the 2021 COAF work plan. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so we all worked on the work plan last meeting. So thank you everybody for all of your thoughts and patience with that. I wanted to let you know that we will be presenting it to the Board of Trustees for their approval at their March meeting. But in the meantime, I know that there was a specific activity that we'd spent a lot of time wordsmithing during the meeting last time, and I just wanted to bring that back around because there was some additional suggested language. So I will share my screen so we can go over that and get your thoughts. There was some wordsmithing related to the work around bar exam question development and grading analysis. And so what I have highlighted here is what we had where we had left it last meeting to recommend the State Bar require in each calendar year implicit bias training. And so actually Gagan, from our Office of General Counsel, she had suggested this language here to maybe be a little bit more clear if COAF members are open to revising that. And so the proposed language is the state bar recommend the state bar require and provide annual implicit bias training during onboarding and orientation of the proctors, graders, and EDGE team.
Yeah, that feels close to what we were trying to get to. Yeah. That would be instead of the terms that are highlighted in blue, Elizabeth?
Yes, just something a little tighter. And because I know we went back and forth a lot on this language, and we kind of closed the loop, but I just wanted to return to it because I know people were really concerned about it.
Looks good to me. I mean, it's much better to simplify things and make it more concise. So thumbs up.
Do the proctors and graders and EDGE team, they have orientation annually, right? So it wouldn't just be for the new people, it would be a reminder course annually, right? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
I had the same question, yeah.
I believe they all have orientation annually. I would, regardless of whether you're returning or a new member, but I can check that, ask about that.
Yeah, there is the current, just FYI, the current currently I think we are asking the graders to take implicit bias training every other year with the new, that's what it had been. And so it rolls, if you're a new grader, then you have to take it when you come in. And if you had just taken it the prior year, I think the focus had been every other year. And then for the proctors, it's a different crop every year. So there would be, there could be some kind of orientation, and there is some kind of orientation for them each and every year.
And if we wanted to tighten the language a little bit to make sure that they get training every year, maybe we can put all before proctors. So it would recommend the state bar require and provide annual implicit bias training during onboarding and orientation of all proctors. So we'll take out the all proctors, graders, and EDGE team. Would that help to incorporate what we want to accomplish? So it's regardless of whether or not they're returning proctors, they do it annually, all of them.
And I was thinking maybe even moving annual to in front of onboarding. So require and provide implicit bias training during annual onboarding and orientation.
Can we say, in case onboarding and orientation are two separate events that happen, a month apart, can we say onboarding or orientation?
That yes, folks? Okay.
And/or.
There you go.
And or, yeah,
Okay.
and/or.
Definitely group of attorneys here. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Don't ask us to work with us, because we're gonna do it.
Okay. I think this is looking very good. So I think we should probably do another vote just for COAF to approve this and to recommend it go to the Board of Trustees in April, since we've changed it from the last meeting.
And can I get someone to make a motion to amend the language to include the two changes that we incorporated?
I
So moved. Second.
So Heather moves and Sal seconds, and roll call vote.
Judge Esther,
Aye.
Ryan, Heather,
Aye.
Novella,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Balak, Kristen,
Aye.
Stephanie, Sal.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries.
This is Judy. Just a clarification question as to who moved.
It was Heather that moved and Sal seconded.
Seconded. And then was there a response from Ryan? My technology seemed to be going in and out a little bit. No. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the motion carries and it is approved. Anything else on that particular subject?
No.
Okay, so let's move on to law school loan repayment, and after that, we'll take a 5-minute break. So Judge Rossi?
Thank you, Judge Esther. Elizabeth is gonna, I think, pull up the PowerPoint, but while she's doing that, I know everyone heard our the presentation that Heather and I made at the last meeting, our impassioned presentation on this issue. Since our meeting in December, Heather and I had a chance to meet with some other stakeholders on this issue, the Access Commission, and then I'm going to get the acronym wrong on LSTFC, but it's
Legal Services Trust Fund Commission.
Thank you.
So
I was going to get it wrong, so I just thought I would let you do that for me,
it's
Elizabeth.
the other sub-entity that our office is staffed to.
Right. And so we had folks from all these groups. And I also want to acknowledge that we had at least 4 State Bar staffers on the call with us. Elizabeth was there, Juan was there, Erica, I think, was there, Chris was there. So, you know, on behalf of Heather and I, you know, we cannot thank you all enough for how much time and effort you are giving to this, because, you know, it's something that we both feel really passionate about. And it was nice to see all the State Bar folks there who also, you know, all felt really passionate about it. So like I said, we met in January with all of these other stakeholders, and it was a great meeting. Folks came up with a lot of ideas that Heather and I had not thought of, as well as thinking about some of the things that we had brought up. And so as you can see from the PowerPoint, we came up with a number of ways to sort of tackle loan repayment and loan forgiveness in California, especially talking about ways that we can finance these programs. We also spent some time talking about ways in which we can engage the new administration to perhaps fix some of the issues that are wrong with the federal loan forgiveness payment plan already. So we talked about, as you can see from the PowerPoint, foundations and other folks that might be willing to contribute. This includes corporate sponsors, banks, credit unions. Somebody, I guess one of the board members on the Access Commission is a general counsel for a credit union. So we're going to look, you know, at those kinds of funding options as well. Grant funding, things like that. The State Bar staff is going to take the lead on doing most of the research, which is nice. And, you know, we're also going to be looking at what the ABA is doing, what other states are doing. We talked about advocating for an income tax exemption or credit. Depending on the type of loan repayment or forgiveness you get, it may be taxable to the student who's receiving it, which of course defeats the very important purpose of trying to get this program going. So we talked about ways that we might be able to either get an exemption or work around. There are some states and entities who have found a workaround. So we're going to look into that. And then we talked also about getting banks to lower their interest rates for student loans in exchange for community reinvestment credit. Right now, the federally subsidized loans are fairly low, but we also spent quite a bit of time talking about how many students in law school need to take out more than what the federal the federal loans allow. And so lots of students, especially students in diverse populations, are looking for these at these private loans, which carry interest rates that are considerably higher than the publicly subsidized loans, some in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 to 12%. So we talked about ways that we can get the interest rate down for those loans as well. So really, you know, it was a great conversation with a lot of really great ideas from other folks we hadn't thought about. And I won't speak for Heather, but I'm sure that she will echo what I'm saying, which is that we both felt after the meeting like we had a lot more momentum and a lot more possibilities than we did before. So we meet again in March. We have a meeting in March again with the same group of stakeholders, but it was a really positive meeting, and a lot of really good work I think is going to come out of it. And Heather, do you want to jump in and add anything?
You summarized it beautifully. We were so energized by the transfer of enthusiasm to the rest of the brainstorming bunch, like amazing ideas coming out of it that we didn't even see. It was just so nice to have such a variety of experts and so many different fields and bringing such diverse viewpoints on how we could do it. And we both left like really excited about it. And I think everyone else did too. So thank you to all the staff that helped contribute to that. And we're really looking forward to the next meeting.
We have a member of the public who has their hand raised. Claire Salat, I'm gonna give you permission to talk.
Hi there. As many of you know, the legal service fund is very, very engaged and passionate about this issue. I think a few of you actually attended programs we've had in the past. So we just want to offer our assistance to help brainstorm and think about some strategies to pursue this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Salat. This is extremely important, especially to our younger lawyers. I don't remember law school being about 400,000 when I graduated, but that's about the average that our students are graduating from law school, and that includes their boarding, their books and what have you. And so many of my students that I mentor, they want to go into legal aid, and they just can't make the numbers work. And so I think this is really important work. So thank you, Heather. Thank you, Judge Kristen. Thank you to the staff for getting this together. Any other questions or comments? And since we're a little ahead of schedule, is it okay, Elizabeth, if we take a 5-minute break just so that we can stretch?
Of course, yes.
Okay. So is 5 minutes enough, or should we do 10? 10? Okay, let's do a
10.
Let's do 10 minutes. So we'll be back in 10 minutes.
Block.
Do we need roll call again, or can we add her to our present list?
I think we might just want to take roll call just because we had a break.
Okay. So let's take a roll call.
Okay. Judge Esther.
Present.
Ryan.
Here.
Heather.
Here.
Novella.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Shalak.
Here.
Kristen.
Here.
Stephanie. Sal.
Present.
Okay. We do again have a quorum.
Okay, great, thank you. So moving on to K, which is discussion on additional diversity and inclusion initiatives, and Andrea and Elizabeth.
Hi, good afternoon again. So I'm just going to speak briefly to sort of frame this discussion. So in the process of working on the biannual diversity and inclusion report to the legislature, we were talking about what additional what additional efforts would be first well suited to the State Bar platform that would also hopefully help us implement or have other organizations implement the calls to actions in the diversity report card, as well as what kinds of other diversity efforts would we be well positioned to engage in that would hopefully have some measurable progress, right? So what can we do that we can also measure and look at the how it's moving forward. So in the process of brainstorming that, Elizabeth had what I think is a great idea. There's my little trailer 30 seconds before she talks about it. So I'm going to let her share that idea with you. But just the framing I wanted to give for this guided discussion is that we're still iterating on this idea and somewhat still in the brainstorming phase. And so we were hoping to get COAF's wisdom and input on this earlier rather than later in the process. So this isn't sort of a polished idea yet so much as I think a really great concept that we're starting to build out. And just thank you in advance for your input. And I should mention that Judy, who's here with us today, is also supporting the work on this. So Judy, please also feel free to chime in as we talk through this idea. So with that little preview, I'll let Elizabeth kind of share where we're at with this concept.
Thanks, Andrea. So as Andrea mentioned, so this is a very early idea in its infancy, so one of the things we were trying to think about is with the report card, it's something that we will be publishing annually, and we have these calls to action in the report card, which are great. They can be useful tools, but we didn't just want to like put something out there and then not know what happened to it, not know if people were finding it useful. And so this concept is to engage legal employers to take action on the report card and to develop some kind of, and we're open to what we name this, like some kind of certification or signature program or a leadership firm or nonprofit program where if we had 10 calls to action, if a legal employer can commit to 7, 8 of the 10, the organization commits to collecting data from their attorneys and publishing their data. The law firm commits to engaging in a formal kind of work assignment process with the committee. Maybe in the first year, if they can commit to 7 or 8 of the 10, they can become, a leadership firm, and they'd have a spotlight there would be a spotlighted webpage on the State Bar website with a list of firm names, for example. And then maybe in years 3 to 5, we would expect, they are collecting this data, they are publishing this data, they are, they have a published diversity and inclusion plan for their organization that meets, kind of the needs of their organization. And so we're hoping that doing this, we can, encourage legal employers to really think about how they want to engage in diversity, equity, and inclusion for their firms and for their organizations. And because we know that attorneys are a little bit competitive, we're hoping that, having some kind of certification or signature program or whatever we want to call it, and being able to maybe list their names on the State Bar website would be something that would be attractive, would be something that they would want to do, similar to, Pro Bono Institute has their Pro Bono Challenge. That's kind of how we want to engage. And so we are open to, kind of, any ideas that you all might have on this.
So
Yeah,
this
and
is
I would just quickly,
sorry. I was sorry. Go ahead, Andrea, please.
Oh, no, sorry, this is really fast. I would just quickly add, so that PBI model of the pro bono signatories, which almost every big law firm ended up signing on to, was saying there's a certain percentage of your overall hours that will be pro bono. And that got a huge response. And all that means is you sign something and then PBI followed up on the data, and every big law firm wanted to be part of it once there was momentum. And looking at our leadership bank program on the IOLTA side, certain banks commit to certain preferred terms and then we say they're leadership banks because they're committing to certain rates with us. And we also, just conceptually thought about like LEED certified. Obviously that's a very different space. It's environmental, but if you get certified, people know what that means. And, it's good in terms of your marketing. And so that was just to add to that, that PBI concept. That's the kind of concept that we're playing with. And Elizabeth mentioned the names. We've talked about signature, leadership, certification. So very open to your thoughts on even sort of the naming as well as the substance. But sorry, I
No, look, I was just going to ask, I mean, it sounds like kind of like the, what is it, UL, like United Laboratories, there's a little symbol that companies get when they meet certain standards and certification, have to meet a certain standard to get the certification. And I've seen a lot of companies use that, someone as a calling card or a stamp of it being a little bit more of a premier product or program. I like the idea. So if we could do something like that and maybe label it like COAF certified, something like that, where a program is COAF certified, that would be awesome. I like it.
Great.
I like it. I think it's actually genius. Sorry, Esther.
No, go ahead.
And I was just looking at the link that Heather stuck in the chat too. I think it's a great idea, and I think it builds on the lawyers like to compete, and people like to be certified and stuff, and if you can put it, and if you can, if you come up with a catchy little, like the lead that Andrea was just talking about, if you come up with a catchy little logo that they can stick on the homepage of their website that says, State Bar, State Bar certified, DEI law firm, I think folks are going to like that. I know the National LGBT Bar does something like that too, with folks who make with the law firms that make an effort to recruit from LGBTQ law students. I think it's a great idea. And well done, Elizabeth.
Yeah, genius.
And I was going to add, I love the step up idea as well, so that this isn't just a one-time deal. It's you're always doing better so that you can get ultimately the ultimate certification. So I love that there's a 1-year plan, 3-year plan, maybe a 5-year plan.
Yeah, and what we talked about, and Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, was the reason for that is also like maybe people could sign on right away, but that part's more aspirational. They said they're committing to doing, let's say 7 of 10. We're making up that number, but just conceptually. And then, we kind of look at what's been implemented in that next phase for the accountability piece.
Yeah, and I think what we could all we would want to think about is, for a law firm and an in-house legal department, those 10 items might be different than for a nonprofit or for government. And so we can be really flexible and maybe have like different menus for different types of employers. So there's lots of possibility, and it's very exciting. So I'm glad that there's some positivity here. And I see Novella, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I like the idea of like the public accountability and like the pressure to compete. And I feel like it'll encourage a lot of organizations and employers to participate who wouldn't have otherwise. One question I have is just how we would tie the certification markers to things that would authentically reflect what it's like to be like an underrepresented attorney in those organizations. So I'm thinking in particular about working at an organization where we did have training and we had an outside consultant came in and they provided this like really great framework to think about diversity and inclusion issues, and they encourage us to use this like equity decision framework and like identify all the decision points and like really use that language. But then once the trainers left, we really struggled with implementing it to the point where we weren't implementing it. We just had the training and then it was gone when the trainer might as well took it with them. And so I wonder about it from that perspective. And then I also wonder like whose voice should be the authoritative one to say that a particular employer like has achieved a marker. And I think that might come up more in just the implementation, but those are some thoughts I have.
One of the things you might want to think about is, I mean, I think, right, depending on, right, we're talking in this hypothetical 7 of 10, but there are certain things which, in order to demonstrate that you've achieved, maybe you have to you have to survey the firm to make sure that, right, it's, as you know, we all know, diversity and inclusion are two very different things. And meeting diversity goals is great, but having an inclusive environment is critically important also. And the only people who can tell us if the environment has changed or the environment is inclusive, it is not sort of the person who's doing the bean counting and telling us, you know, sort of what their statistics are. And maybe you have to survey the employees, and that's part of sort of the highest level certification, is having that acknowledgement from the staff that it is an inclusive environment.
I think that I love this idea, by the way. I think that has to happen separately. So you have a firewall there. Like at my company, I wouldn't want whoever filled out the survey to say, go talk to these 10 people. I would want the bar to figure out who works there and then send them a separate, you know, request so that they could feel like they could be very, you know, open and honest about that. So figuring out logistically how you would get that verification.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But I think that we do have models we can look to. Like I know like the associate satisfaction survey, law firms encourage people to fill it out, but it's anonymous, right? It's voluntary and it's anonymous, right? That data is never going to be tied back to that associate, just as one example. So I think that's such a good point. And I do think there are ways that could be addressed.
And
That
Sarah,
doesn't mean there's a lot of people who can fill it out though, right? Like that there's such a large pool that, you know, it could remain anonymous. If you've got 5, it's pretty easy to determine, you know, who might have said what. So that's something to take into consideration.
I think Sarah had her hand up first.
Okay, I just had a comment here, just from the law firm side of things. There's a lot of certification. And I'm sorry, this is going to be like a heavy dose of cold water. And I think it's a great idea and it's really creative, and keep the great ideas coming. And I don't want to be that person, but I guess I kind of am, but it's a great idea. There's a lot of kind of certification fatigue. I mean, everyone wants to certify everything. And, you know, I'm also very skeptical of some of these things are not really authentic. It's a check the box. Look, we're great. We're inclusive. We got this certification or that certification. And then you will talk to people at that organization, and the reality is very, very different. I think it's sort of picking up on some of the themes that Novella mentioned, and then that Donna followed up on in terms of what's real and authentic and what is just sort of window dressing, so to speak. It's the difference between having a glossy brochure about your DE&I initiatives and then really having metrics and data to show that you're an inclusive organization, that you have a lot of women and diverse folks in the partnership from the law firm perspective and all of that. So I know we're besieged by surveys and certifications, and there definitely is fatigue there. And 2, I wonder, you know, does the state bar want to get into this business? Do we really have the resources that we want to allocate to this? Because this does sound, you know, while it sounds like an exciting, novel, new idea, it sounds incredibly burdensome and time consuming. Going to some of the points that other people have brought up, who's going to decide, you know, who's reached the criteria or hasn't reached the criteria? How are you going to track this across our very populous and very diverse state of California, you know, with our 250,000 attorneys and law firms and government and everything else? So I would just say, hey, just, you know, proceed with caution is kind of what I'm saying. I just question if we want to get into this business of certification at all. So that's my point. Thanks.
I love the Elizabeth is a genius comment, and it's valid. I appreciate that. Obviously, these are important considerations. I would be curious, Sarah, and maybe you can share this later, or when you mentioned on the law firm side a lot of certifications and that granted I wasn't in a full-time diversity role, but I don't recall any program like this that one could sign on to within the law firm community. So if you have examples to share of maybe things that are already being done so that nothing's duplicative, that would also be, I think helpful as it's being developed.
Yeah, it's slightly different. Like Heather shared Mansfield certification, for example. That's a big one. A number of us, law firms and corporate in-house groups, I know Heather's employer does, are in LCLD. There are various certifications there. If you participate in certain programs at LCLD, you get the certification at the end of the year that you can put on your website. The Human Rights Campaign Fund has its certified employers, law firms over X number of attorneys can compete and then get certified. There's, work, and even sort of some award programs like Working Moms, right? They kind of award, awards and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff. And if you go to a law firm's like diversity page, you'll see the little images of, all the things that they're a member of, they're certified by or participated in. And, sometimes it presents a good impression, but it also isn't authentic. So,
No, those are good concerns. Ryan, I think you had your real life hand, not your Zoom hand up.
And actually, Shalak had her hand up first.
Oh, sorry.
So
Okay, go ahead,
we'll
Shalak.
take Shalak and then Ryan.
Thank you all. And it's actually just very interesting because the meeting that made me late here was around this same topic, but for law schools. And so I thought it might carry over well, or something you might want to consider is looking at LESI, the Law School Student Survey and Engagement. I can drop the link, but they recently published a report that was looking at some of this and how law schools, now they're moving to like how law schools can show that they aren't just saying that they're committed to diversity and inclusion, but are actually sustainably doing that. And one of the concerns is what Heather raised, that there's such a small amount of law students whom they identify in all the different ways and whom would be selected to answer these questions. And they raised that if it's just a broad report, people who might be the least impacted are more likely to give favorable remarks on a survey than the other. And so I think that is something to very carefully consider in doing something like this, which echo everyone. Elizabeth is in fact a genius, but I do think like that is something in design to consider as to whether or not it would just be give it to the law firm and have them encourage 60% of their associates and staff to respond, which could be great, but if only 5 of those would identify in the identities that you're really curious about, and the 95% is saying like, everything's great here, they do great diversity work and we can keep on moving, check. And the 5 who are actually maybe most stigmatized or impacted are not experiencing that. So that's just something really to consider in setting this out, versus some who find validity to the survey because you checked with everybody and not just the people you assume are most stigmatized or impacted. So I did want to raise that, but that it might be worth looking at just for comparison on how they're doing it on that side. And I'm happy to forward over any of those. I was also thinking when you were talking about this sort of step up, that it might be that that is where you get to, I think, whether it's actually a substantive commitment versus something that's more performative or window dressing, like Sarah said. So if the step up is, and you're sustaining these changes over the course of 5 years, you're sustaining, like you've implemented this and it's been sustainable for X, then you get the certification. That, I can see the downside is everyone wants a really quick thing they can drop on their website. So, maybe it'll weed out the people who aren't committed, but I can see that being sort of a downside. So it might need to be tiered. You sustain for 6 months, you sustain for a year, 3 years, 5 years, may need to be something as well. And then I was going to highlight Mansfield. I've had a lot of students looking at that to determine the types of firms and organizations they want to work with. So I think it could have a lot of appeal to that public pressure, and where we have new attorneys entering the profession and them putting pressure on firms and organizations, but just wanted to throw those caveats out there too.
Ryan?
All right, thank you. So what I've been seeing a lot is a lot of outreach and recruitment in the field of DEI. Like, you hire an African-American person, throw them on a bunch of pamphlets and put them on the website and say, look, we're diverse. But there to me hasn't been a lot of attention toward the retention aspect in particular. And by the way, I do support state bar certification of DEI efforts, but with respect to one specific element, and that's when a person who works inside the firm has an opportunity to promote from junior associate to mid-level associate to senior associate to partner to equity partner. They should have to speak to how specific actions they engaged in to facilitate and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within the organization. And if that is measured and considered, then that behavior will become more profound at various law firms, because people want to promote, they want to make more money, they want to grow. And unless and until that happens, I don't really see a big impact in this space. I know that, Mansfield, I'm not like an expert in it, but it kind of measures whether folks are, the keyword is considered. You have to consider 30% or something like that. Well, that's great and all, but it's considered is like can mean anything really. And so when you look at the performance metrics and being able to speak to specifically how you facilitate DEI in an organization as a key measure for promotional opportunity, and maybe the state bar, if you want state bar certification, you have to send your policy to the state bar and someone can just check that box, right? That sounds pretty simple to me. Then when that measurement is adopted within the organization, you start seeing a real lasting impact.
And perhaps what we can consider in the committee is what does it mean to be certified? And for me, the way that I kind of measure success is not just checking off a box and relying on the 5 partners to say, yes, we did this, but it's measurable outcomes. So when you first started the process, how many women did you have as partners? How many associates were associates of color? How many were at this level? And then 5 years later, give us the numbers again. If you only had, and that's important for small size firms, large firms, mid-sized firms, because we can't expect a small size firm of 5 people to boast about promoting the 1 women to partner, versus if they never had a women partner in their 25 years of existence, but since combining into this program, not only have you considered 2 out of the 5 to be partners, and 1 did make partner. It's those measurable outcomes, and perhaps that's something that we can talk about in the certification stage, and that gives them something to work towards and to prove to the state bar. Not only are these words and boxes that I'm checking, but look at our numbers. This is where we started, and this is what efforts we've put into, and these are the numbers that we have. And I think that those are some of the things that we also need to consider, especially in the certification stage, so that we don't get just a lot of, we're wonderful, we did this, or we did 1 outreach, or we gave 1 training, like Novella was saying, and we're doing great. Well, if you haven't implemented those changes, you haven't been doing great. So maybe that's something that we can consider, because we also need measurable, tangible outcomes from the participants. But I think it's a great idea.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. This is all really great feedback. As Andrea and I said earlier, this is a very early concept idea, and we'll definitely look into all your all the feedback that you've provided, and maybe a little when we have a little bit more of when we move from concept to something a little bit more, I can't think of the right word right now, but like actionable,
Okay, yeah.
then we'll ask for volunteers for a working group to look more into this.
Yeah, but very helpful feedback. Thank you.
Great. And any additional ideas? I think we can just open it up to any additional D&I efforts that we want to consider. Heather.
Just want to keep reminding that we want to do another video for the law school pipeline, so want to keep that front of mind.
And that is in the proposed work plan that the board will look at in March. So once we get that approval, then we can move forward.
There's one more thing that I want to mention, Judge Esther, and it has to do with pay. When I was working in the Senate, we did 2 different pay evaluations, one based off of gender and then one based on race, consistent with various laws that were passed one year after the other. And we found clear evidence that there was inequity in pay. And I think that when you work in an organization and there is someone else similarly situated and you earn less, that is a big buzzkill. And so one of the things that maybe firms can speak to is whether they've conducted like a pay equity analysis and is their pay fair,
And that's something that we can track, right? Because they can give us how much associates who enter, what their range is versus they've made any changes. So I think that's, again, one of the tangible outcomes that we can measure throughout time. And Elizabeth, can we also kind of open it up to some of the additional things that we want to maybe add to the work plan? So nothing outside the realm of the plan, but let's say we wanted to do a smaller project within some of the work plans. Is that something that we can discuss now?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone have any ideas that would fit within our 2021 work plan, but perhaps another side activity or a side project for each of the strategic plans? I had one. This is goal 4, objective M. So this is the elimination of bias. Since we're almost done with getting that completed, we're just working on the content page for the state bar. I wanted to propose kind of what we discussed at the August 2020 meeting, which is the ABA in 2016. They actually made discrimination unprofessional conduct. And what they did was in 2019, they added 20 hours per year for each attorney to engage in D&I work, promoting equality. And that was kind of the goal. And Pat Lee actually sent me a really wonderful article on that, which I will forward to the COAF members. And I know that was something that we discussed, perhaps that taking on right after the elimination of bias, since we were starting to conclude on that plan. But really kind of looking at it as a goal to encourage attorneys to dedicate at least 20 hours to D&I efforts, whether it is promoting equality, whether it's doing pro bono work, whether it's speaking to students. So that was something that I wanted to propose as part of the objective M, goal 4.
So is this that they have a model, the ABA has a model, I'm going to say rule, but I don't think it's a rule, but like a model rule to that every attorney, like aspirational, every attorney should do 20 hours of DEI work
per year. And Pat, I don't think it's actually been passed, right?
Right. It's proposed. It's an aspirational rule, just very similar to the pro bono aspirational rule that's currently in the California Rules of Professional Conduct. So it's not mandated or anything, but it's a proposed that attorneys voluntarily contribute.
Is that in front of the Board of Governors for February? Do you know?
No.
Okay.
No.
And it wouldn't necessarily be a rule like the elimination of bias requirement, but it would
Right,
be.
it's not a requirement.
Right.
It's like the pro bono. However, the pro bono rule is incorporated into the state bar rules, and it's aspirational. The pro bono one is, it contribute at least 50 hours, but it's not mandated. So this is proposing 20 hours.
Okay, and just to be clear, there's an ABA aspirational 50-hour pro bono rule, but I don't think there's a corresponding state bar one.
Oh, well, it's a pro bono policy then, right? Years ago, the Board of Governors passed the pro bono policies, but I guess it's not in the rules of professional conduct.
No.
So it could be a policy too. It doesn't have to go into the rules of professional conduct.
And I think this is also just so that, I know a lot of the big law firms, they loud their pro bono experience, and they will say, we dedicate 50 hours, per year to pro bono services. And we actually even have a pro bono coordinator. So this is kind of to ride off on that realm, to say, we're committed to 20 hours at least a year, and 50-60% of our attorneys engage in this type of work. They reach out to students, they reach out to their communities to do this. So I thought that was something that maybe we can add on, since we're nearing the end of our elimination of bias project.
And it could be used in firms and other with legal employers who might want to allow attorneys to count that as part of their billable hours too, the way they allow pro bono work.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we can add that on as something to review and make a recommendation on.
Great. And I kind of thought of this during our morning call with the stakeholders, with the California lawyers. So in our small group meeting, a lot of the individuals were sharing, I wish there was resources, and I didn't know until I joined this meeting today for CLA that all these resources were out there. And so I know, Elizabeth, we may have talked about this when we were doing the law schools, and we invited all the deans to speak. We wanted kind of a resource page. I also know that we have a list of affinity bars on our website. And I'm wondering, how difficult would it be for us to take that list of affinity bars or different organizations and make that into a hyperlink for somebody just to come up to the state bar, go through the list, and then click on it. And I envision, for instance, many bar organizations, they have their annual scholarship dinner. And I shared a story about how before I was appointed, I was part of the National API Prosecutors Association. And we had $12,000 to give out in scholarships. And we were hoping to pick from a big pool so that we can give scholarships to either 3 or 4 different individuals. And we had all but 2 apply. And we had all this money. And we then did some outreach, and we started reaching out to different students that we mentored, different bar organizations. But again, the money is out there. And, I would just kind of highlight one organization, MAVA Foundation, in 2020 gave out $226,000. And they were in increments of $8,000 to $10,000 per student. And so these resources are out there. And especially when we're talking about students coming out with $400,000 in loans, wouldn't it be great if we had, through the state bar, one organization where we keep a list, and it's just a hyperlink. It's up to each of the organizations to put up their own information about scholarships, about job opportunities. But if there was one hub where they can just link, is that something that we would be capable?
I don't think that's something that we would have the resources to. And I actually think, when the section separated from the state bar, CLA actually took on a lot of those responsibilities. And I think what you're talking about, Judge Esther, is something that I think CLA has talked about trying to do in their efforts. I think it fits more in their wheelhouse at this point.
Partner with them?
We don't have a list of affinity bars. We actually often have to ask CLA to help us outreach to the affinity bars on items because we no longer have an Office of Bar Relations. And so I really like the idea, but I do think it is more something that CLA may already be planning to do.
Okay, and maybe that's something that we can partner with?
Yeah. I can reach out to Ellen Miller and just see what their plans are on that.
And certainly we can, and I think we talked about this before, we can put a link on our diversity page that links to CLA's list of
Okay.
bar associations.
And maybe that's the partnership, because I kind of saw that under objective H, identify means of supporting existing law school programs and improve retention. I mean, if we can get scholarship information out to the students, that would absolutely improve retention. I think I saw a bunch of hands go up. I saw Sal, Heather, Shalak. So Sal?
I'm sorry, say that again. Somebody was asking me a question behind me.
No problem. I saw your hand go up.
On the Golden Gate Bridge.
Somebody not to ask me any questions right now because I'm in the middle of the meeting. Sorry. No, I have no questions.
Okay, Heather?
I was just going to echo what Donna said. I'm so glad you brought this up, Judge Esther, because I forgot that we had talked about this, and then that Donna's solution, I think, is what we said, that we would at least link out to the CLA page so that we could get those resources up. So this was a great reminder. Thank you.
Shalak?
Yeah, it was a thought that was sort of inspired by your thought here, Judge Esther, but on a slightly separate note. And of course, Elizabeth and Andrea and others can tell me if this is something that's already under works, maybe from the State Bar, but looking at Objective L on identifying particular obstacles to diverse attorneys' entry into retention and advancement in the profession, I'm wondering if anyone has started doing any research or data into the impact of COVID-19, the bar exam, particularly on, we look at bar passage and I'm thinking who has the resources to retake the bar exam. I know the lowered cut score is a separate thing, but the impact of the pandemic on all of this and whether or not, I can suspect anecdotally that it's more strongly impacting more diverse populations, but I think it would be powerful to have the data behind that, and then maybe doing a compare and contrast to the 2008 recession and how that impacted those diverse attorneys.
So Shalak, we are doing a survey focused on the pandemic for attorneys, but not law students.
I'm thinking more like either newly barred or those who sat for and this may be completely unfeasible and unrealistic, but like those who sat for October, that bar sitting and or maybe are sitting for February, and just the entry into the profession, and perhaps even like newly barred within the past year or two, and how it may be impacting, if at all, their retention. And I thought about it as Judge Esther was referencing, the law student debt and everything that people are graduating with and having the pandemic on top of it. But the bar may already, or you may say this is more properly in someone else's wheelhouse.
Yeah, we haven't talked about internally about surveying law students in this related to COVID and the bar exam. And in terms of, newer attorneys, they will be asked to take the pandemic survey that we will be sending out in March. But this is good feedback, and we can see if there are others who might be able to do this more quickly, because it sounds like you're interested in the impact of the October bar exam and the upcoming one. But that's not something that we've talked about internally that I'm aware of.
Heather?
And that's an identified gap, right? Because those students are not students. Like if they've already graduated, they're not going to fall in the law school students, and they're not lawyers yet because if they haven't passed or they haven't been sworn in. So who's responsible for those people in the gap and getting information from them? I don't know which organization covers that. So that was one thing. I thought that was great, Shalak. But I wanted to go back to Judge Esther's recommendation about the hours for D&I, which I also love. Because I like stacking all these things together, I think that should be one of the criteria for the co-op certification. how many of your employees are committed to have it fulfilled, whatever that hour commitment is. So once we get that in place, then that becomes one of the criteria in the certification too. So
That's great. And to Shalak's question, I wonder if, I don't know if we're going to have another law school convening of the deans, but I wonder if that's where we get some of that information.
And if I may, maybe that is part of what Heather identified, maybe is what I wasn't saying as well, that the ABA does have some data that, for example, for Black law students, approximately 9% of law students will self-identify as Black, but consistently in the profession, 5% of attorneys self-identify as Black. And so there's a gap there. And I think some of that objective L is getting to what's happening in that 4% gap. And if all of this is going to it, and if we could make any recommendations to try to stave off what might be some drop off that we see. And I don't know that the law schools are going to do any outreach to these people, and the state bars are like, we don't have them on record because they're not licensed. So this is just where some of that was coming from.
I do think this, I think we've got pieces of this, and it's a matter of thinking through if we already sort of if we just have to piece together what we already have, if there is sort of a hole here or not, right? We're getting the data from the law schools that we never had before on attrition in law schools and what the attrition rate is looking like. And I think especially when you're talking about older students, non-traditional students who typically go to the California accredited schools or the registered schools more so than the ABA schools, you may see, a larger attrition rate as a result of the pandemic and financial circumstances that they're facing. So that will tell us a piece of it. We did a survey of all of the applicants, all of the people who sat for the October bar exam. We surveyed them and we asked them about their experience and what it was like, taking an exam at home, and whether they, had noise distractions and, a variety of things like that. And we also, one of the things that we're also putting out in a few weeks is following a bar exam, we immediately, when we release the grades, we release the sort of overall percentage. And then over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks, we put out school-specific information, and that allows us to also do a breakdown of passage rates by gender, race, ethnicity, law school type. And so we're really close to putting that out. And one of the things that we posted on our website back in March was a simulation. It was an ability to do a simulation of what would the pass rates have been over the past 10 years of bar exams had the bar exam, had the cut score been lower across 5 or 6 different potential cut scores. And so you can also look at, and that's one of the things that I've got sort of on my task to do, but take a look at, the past couple of bar exams. If the cut score were where it is now, what is the pass rate by race and ethnicity now as compared to what would it have been then? Because that also gives us some insight into were people from certain backgrounds more affected by the technology issues, by the having to have a quiet space, et cetera. So we've got pieces of it, Shalak, and I think we can sort of, as we put them together, I think we've got answers to the questions, and it's just a matter of thinking through it all the right way.
Any other suggestions or ideas? Michael?
There we go. I think this is related to what Shalak was talking about, and I'm pretty sure Donna's going to be the one who will have the answer to this, which has to do with the provisional licensure program, and especially now that it's expanded, what the state bar is doing, or what COAF may be able to do to, one, track what that group looks like. I think that one of the things that I think about a lot is who are the folks applying to the provisional licensure program who can't get a supervising attorney for whatever reason. And if there's any gap there, particularly if it's a gap related to demographics, what either the state bar can do itself or can do to partner. I know that you're partnering with other organizations, but whether COAF is the right organization to be a part of that.
So I think we can certainly track the, right through our admissions information system, which everybody who's registering, who's applying to be a provisionally licensed lawyer, and through that system, we have the demographic information if they've reported it, or if they're required to report something, maybe it's declined to state, or make a selection. So we do have that information, and we can certainly look at the breakdown of the people who are provisionally licensed. The bigger issue is those who can't, who maybe can't find a supervisor because they shouldn't even be applying to the program. So we may not know who they are. In all likelihood, some people have applied without a supervisor and we've rejected their application, but the others haven't, because that actually is an entry requirement. And so one of the things I need to circle back with CLA on, but we had talked about, so back up. The state bar had sent an email to all licensed attorneys, all 250,000 active licensed attorneys about the program, and encouraged them to be supervisors. And we actually have this great timing, Michael. We actually have another all licensee newsletter that's scheduled to go out in 2.5 weeks. And so we can add a piece onto that. And then I think we can just forward sort of the same thing that we write up for that to CLA and ask them to send it to the best contacts at the regional, at the affinity bar associations across the state, because I think that's where, frankly, our best hit will be, is with the affinity bars, being able to share with their members the importance of supporting provisionally licensed lawyers and being a supervisor. So we'll craft that message for the newsletter, and then and engage CLA, who's previously partnered with us on the provisionally licensed lawyers and talking about the importance of it. So so yeah, this is a absolutely appropriate next step.
So maybe Michael's idea about getting an update from CLA, Shalak's idea of maybe looking more into if we have that data to see how we can address that gap, and also working with CLA to try to get at least their webpage onto our website so that they would have their affinity list. Maybe that's something that we can just get an update on at the next meeting. And logistically, for the suggestion of the 20 aspirational hours for D&I work, is that something that we wanted to discuss more in detail at the next meeting? Because right now it's just discussion items.
Yeah, I think if there are a couple of COAF members who might want to volunteer to look into that, we can meet between now and our next meeting in May, and make a brief presentation to COAF at the meeting, just to guide our discussion. So if there are volunteers who might want to work on that, let me know. I'll also put that volunteer opportunity into the email that I will send to follow up with the other links that I've promised.
Great. Anything else? Then let's move on to our liaison reports. Do we have Kenneth Wing from CLA?
No, it doesn't look like he is signed in yet.
And we're actually way past the time because it was supposed to be at 2:30. So I think we'll skip Ken. And if we can hear from Pat for Cal Law.
Thank you. see, a number of things here. One of the main project that we've been working on for the past couple of months is developing the final program and presentations and so forth for the Pathway to Law Summit, which is on February 17th to 19th. It's a virtual format over 3 days. And just wanted you all to know that the registration closes on Monday. Monday's the last day for registration. To give you some highlights, the first day we always devote to professional development for high school teachers, community college, law school teachers, and then for the students that participate. And the main focus of this, the first day will be on mindfulness in how to deal and remain calm and so forth during the pandemic in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and so forth. Rhonda McGee is a professor from USF. She will be the keynote speaker addressing encouraging your mindfulness. Nicole Banks is from Santa Clara University. She'll be moderating a panel on de-stressing in a stressful world. And then when we look at the 3 separate tracks going on for high school teachers on surviving and thriving amidst the pandemic, for the community college, law school, and undergraduate teachers on getting students ready for the workplace. And then we have a student track on what I wish I knew about college and law school. The second day is the main day focusing on racial equity and justice issues. We decided to open it up with a YouTube presentation of Amanda Gorman reciting her poem that she presented at the inauguration to set the stage and provide inspiration and so forth. And then we'll have as our keynote, Rob Bunta, Assembly member from District 18. And then we have 4 speakers who present TED Talk style presentations who have experience in the civic engagement, elected officials, the advocates, and so forth in the community. Lorena Gonzalez, the Assemblywoman, will be one of the speakers. David Campos, who's a former San Francisco board member and so forth, and he's currently the chief of staff for the district attorney in San Francisco City and County. Terrence Evans, who some of you might know, he's Dwayne Morris, he's a bar leader and a community advocate to describe how he is able to affect change through his roles in the legal profession. And Nathan Mizell, he's currently a junior at UC Berkeley, but he's also the vice chair of the Berkeley Police Commission. So he'll give his perspective as how students can get involved at an early level in terms of effecting change and civic engagement. The third day, and I wanted to thank Ryan and Judge Esther for being on that planning committee to help us with that program. And Ryan's going to be one of the moderators for the last 2 speakers. The third day we'll be focusing on our keynote speakers, Latifah Simon. I don't know if any of you know her, but she's really very impressive from an early age as a teenager all the way up to now. So she's a nationally known advocate for civil rights and racial justice. She will be our keynote, and she'll set the stage for that day. Then we'll have Shalak, who's also coordinating that day. Thank you, Shalak. She will be bringing some Pepperdine students who will describe a mentoring program that they've created, and they're going to unveil that so we could all take advantage of that. And then there'll be a panel of law students who've gone through various stages of the pathway to tell how the pathway has affected their lives in a very positive way. And then that day will be closed out with an awards reception from the California Law Awards will be presented to an organization that's going to San Diego Gas and Electric, to a high school, Wilson High School and Law Academy in Los Angeles, and to the Fresno City College as a community college recipient. We'll also present the Education Pipeline Award and various scholarships that day. So it's a full day, and if you register, we're looking forward to seeing you. If you haven't, you can register for separate days if you don't want to go through all 3 days. But as I said, the registration closes on Monday. Let's see what else. We conducted a survey among all of our pipeline advocates and partners, the high schools, community colleges, undergrad and law school. Based on that feedback, we're going to be convening what we're calling gatherings of the various segments of the pipeline to provide a greater communication among the members of those segments to find out what they're doing well, where they need assistance, what kinds of challenges they're facing, so we can have them convene and communicate among themselves to address those issues. So the first round of those gatherings will be happening late February and into March. So we'll have high school gatherings, community college gatherings, and then undergrad and law school gatherings will be combined. So this is for our partners. So those of you who are partners and work with our pathway partners, you'll be getting announcements of that to participate in that. We're also continuing to partner with the CLA Speakers Bureau, which is being created. And based on the feedback from the surveys that we conducted and these gatherings, we'll be able to help inform those who are coordinating that Speakers Bureau on what topics are needed, what areas of the state they're needed, which is not as important now since we're going virtual. We're trying to increase that Speakers Bureau so that the high schools and the community colleges can tap into that, go online to the CLA website and touch bases with individuals that they'll need to address their classrooms in various subject matter areas. We're collaborating with right now with Contra Costa County District Attorney and Public Defender's offices. They're helping us to develop and promote and present the Know Your Rights programs. We started with the National Bar Association about 8 years ago, working with them to present the first round of these programs at De Anza Law Academy. And we've decided to expand it to present it to all the high schools in Contra Costa County. It's a program that's designed for seniors in the high schools so that they will know what their rights and responsibilities are when encountering law enforcement. And we're going to be creating and expanding a toolkit for that so that all of our law academies throughout the state can use this and hopefully partnering with the CLA Speakers Bureau and affinity bars to recruit the members of the district attorney's offices and public defender's offices to present those workshops. And then finally, we're partnering with a producer of a film called Status Pending. Her name is Priscilla Gonzalez. She created this film with 5 attorneys in Southern California. They're immigration attorneys, and it depicts their experiences with specific cases that they handled, and the impact of the negative immigration policies on their particular clients. We're going to be working with her to work with various organizations, legal services organizations, advocacy groups to produce a screening of the film and then to have a dialogue on those issues so that they can help recruit attorneys and organizations to assist with changing the immigration policies, working with the Biden administration and so forth. And then also to encourage students and law students and young lawyers to think about practicing in the immigration arena. So that's it.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you for all the great work. And please share all the wonderful work of Cal Law to your networks. And I would also add that the present elected Contra Costa County DA was our former COAF chair, Dinah
That's
Becton.
right, Dinah.
So,
and a retired judge. She's a retired judge and now DA.
And so we
And
do
she's
miss
very
her.
active, an active mentor too. She's really supportive of all of our efforts.
And she's great. So thank you for that. And is there any other activity or any other discussion before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Anyone? Okay. Do I need a motion to adjourn?
No. I mean, you could have a motion to adjourn, but I don't need to take a roll call vote.
Well, then Sal's motions and Ryan seconds, and the meeting of COAF is adjourned at 3:07 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
weekend.
Everybody.
Happy Black History Month.